Welcome everybody, Brother Dan Goodwin here. This is the God's Final Jubilee program, and tonight we're going to settle some things. We're going to talk tonight about the Jewish calendar. We're going to talk about Feast of Trumpets. We're going to talk about something called Abib, the Abib Barley, and determining Abib in Israel. This is, by the way, the 9th, September 9th today as I speak. And this is, in Israel, Feast of Trumpets. Now remember, Israel is 7 hours ahead of Eastern Time in America. So when it's noontime in Israel, or when it's noontime in America, it's 9 o'clock p.m. in Israel. It's confusing, I know. But so Feast of Trumpets starts in Israel, and that's the clock you need to go by if you're going to keep up with this stuff. If you're going to keep up with feast days, quit using our time over here. You got to use Israel time, because I promise you, God is not looking at you. He's not looking at us. He's looking at Israel. Israel is what it's all about as far as end times. And I'll explain all that as we go here. Now, we're doing a Facebook Live as we speak. Now, if you're watching via YouTube, you missed it. So what you ought to do is go to my Facebook page. It's God's Final Jubilee Facebook page. And you can find us there. And let's see, is the website over here? The website's right there, godsfinaljubilee.com. You can find the Facebook page there, and you can find our books and DVDs there. We're going to be talking about this book right here, The Barley Harvest, that came out, when did this come out? This came out in 2016. The Barley Harvest. Unbelievable truths in that little book right there. I also have a session on the Barley Harvest on this DVD, the Prophecy Unsealed DVD, what I'm going to talk about tonight. In fact, the slides that I have up here are the exact slides that you'll see if you get this DVD set. I'm not trying to sell you nothing. If you don't want to get the DVDs or the book, that's totally up to you. I just want to let you know that they're there. A lot of confusion about the Barley Harvest and about the Feast of Trumpets and the calendars. So we got a big crowd watching on Facebook tonight, and so if you go to the website, sign up, like the page, the God's Final Jubilee page, and you can be on the live streams with us. We've got a whole bunch of folks watching tonight. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's jump right into the Barley Harvest, and we're going to talk about the calendars tonight a little bit, the clocks and different things, Passover and all that, and Easter and all that was different times a few years back. But in this discussion tonight, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the Barley Harvest. We're going to learn the significance of the Barley Harvest in Israel. In Bible days, and what it means to us today. What it meant then and what it means to us today. Number two, we're going to learn what it meant in Bible days and what it means today, and how it all relates to the Feast of Trumpets, which is Rosh Hashanah in Israel. It's their New Year's. Number three, we're going to learn why nobody can know the day or the hour of the coming of the Lord. Now, all those verses in the Bible that talk about no man can know the day or the hour, they're not talking about the rapture at all. They're talking about his second coming. And I promise you, if you can't know when the second coming is, you can't know when the rapture is. Anyway, got a new book we're working on called 7 Clocks A-Ticking. It'll be ready for the printer. It'll be ready for the publisher in about a week. And very excited for you to get to see that book. It's the most important book that I have ever written. And I wrote the God's Final Jubilee book way back in 2014, put out a special edition of it later. I've written the Mystery of the Jubilee book. I've written the Barley Harvest book and other things. I've got DVDs, but I promise you, this is my most important book that I'm writing right now. It'll be ready soon. There are going to be some startling, shocking developments in that book, and you're going to see how close we are. There are 7 clocks pointing towards the end of time. And I can't wait to share that with you. But for now, on this Feast of Trumpets evening, I want to help you with this. I want to help you understand some things about Feast of Trumpets, the Jewish calendar, and things like that. So let's jump in there. The Barley Harvest is one of those missing pieces of the puzzle a few understand today. That's about to change, because at the completion of our lecture tonight, you're going to understand some things that some of the great prophecy teachers out there do not understand. I'm shocked at how many people are still not getting what I'm going to show you tonight about declaring Abib in Israel, and about the barley harvest, and about the reset of the Jewish calendar. So we're going to learn this tonight. We're going to learn about the Jewish calendar. Let's start right here. When does the day start in Israel? The day begins in Israel, not at midnight like it does on our calendar. Our calendar starts over here at 12:01 tonight. Will be Monday on our calendar. But in Israel, 6 p.m. begins the new day. That goes all the way back to the book of Genesis in chapter 1 and the story of the creative week. The Bible says in the evening and the morning were the first day. And the evening and the morning were the second day and the third day, and so on. God started the calendar in the evening. I believe that the creation day was Tishri 1 at exactly 6 p.m. on God's time clock. And that's where it all began. 6 p.m. on Tishri 1, which is a fall month. I believe that that's where it all began. Josephus believed that. Bishop Ussher believed that. The Jews believed that. Now I realize in the book of Exodus the calendar was changed. We'll get to that in a minute. But don't forget, 6 p.m. is when a day begins in Israel. That's important when you're trying to figure stuff out. It's confusing, but it's important. There are two calendars we need to understand: the Jewish calendar, or the Hebrew calendar, if you want to call it that, and the Gregorian calendar, which is the calendar you and I are using today, and the calendar you have on your phone, the calendar you have on your wall. And then there's God's calendar. God has a perfect 360-day calendar that you see in the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. The 42 months, the 1260-day halves of the tribulation, that's using a 360-day perfect calendar that God uses. Our calendar is 365 and a fourth days. We have that's why we have a leap year, because we're missing 3/4 of a day on the calendar, or there's 3/4. In other words, 365 days and a fourth. So every 4 years we have to add a day to keep the calendar right. The Jewish calendar is short, 11 days almost, 354 point something on their calendar. So they're missing days. So you can do the math. About every 3 years, they're missing 11 days a year. About every 3 years, guess what? They're off a whole month. Can you understand what that will do to their seasons? Can you understand what that will do? Passover after a few years is not going to be in the spring anymore, is it? It's going to be in the winter. Now they had a way to fix that, but let's go on. The Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. It begins on a new moon in the sky. See the moon there? The Jewish calendar goes by the moon. In fact, today, on Feast of Trumpets in Israel, if you could see in the sky, if it's not cloudy, you would see what we call the sliver of the moon, the new moon. Each calendar, since their calendar is a lunar calendar, their calendar is based off of the moon. What that simply means is day 1 is the new moon in the sky, the middle of the month, the 14th, is the full moon, and then it goes the other way and the moon begins what we call the shrinking of the moon, and then it starts all over again. So day 1 is the new moon. In the middle of the month, the moon is full. And then the moon begins to get smaller again in the sky until it's gone. And then it starts all over again. The next month starts on a new moon. That's not complicated, right? Our calendar is based upon the sun. Ours is a solar calendar. In fact, the Greeks gave us this calendar. And it's based off of the sun god and all that, the solar calendar, okay? The Jewish months and the Gregorian months, I'm not going to be able to explain this all to you, but there's both calendars together. You can see that they're staggered there, if you can see that. For instance, March is the month Adar and the month Nisan. They're staggered there because our calendars do not synchronize. That's all I want you to see there. Our calendar and the Jewish calendar are almost never on the same day. For instance, it's day 1 in Israel right now. This is Feast of Trumpets. That means it's the first day of the month Tishri. Well, this is the 9th day on our month. They're on the 7th month on day 1. We're in our 9th month on day 9. This is 9/9/18. Israel's clock is at 7/1 in the year 5779, because this is New Year's for them. This is now a new year. And this is the year 5779. And I got news for you. That's not right. Their calendar is closer to the year 5993 on their calendar, but that's for another day. I was going to show you how the two calendars are, but I doubt you're going to be able to see that. I'm not sure if you can or not, but it shows you that their calendars, March 24th was the 3rd on that month there. and I've already explained that. There's a leap year where they add a 13th month. All right, the key to understand the Jewish leap year as well as God's prophetic calendar is to understand the difference between Abib and Nisan. Let me very quickly show you this. Abib or Nisan. The word Abib is a noun. It means to produce the first or early fruit. The first month of the Jewish calendar called Nisan. Now this is right out of Webster's 1828 dictionary. It begins at the spring equinox and answers to the latter part of March or the beginning of April, depending on that leap year month, right? The word Nisan is the same. It means a month of the Jewish calendar, the first month of the sacred year, the seventh of the civil year, answering nearly to our March, but sometimes April. It was originally called Abib, but began to be called Nisan after the captivity. So the word Abib is the biblical name. The word Nisan that everybody uses is actually the Babylonian name. It's the name that is used outside of Israel when they don't have their temple, when they're not doing the temple worship. Okay, and you'll understand what I mean by that in a minute. Okay, Abib is used 6 times in your Bible. And here they are. This day came out in the month Abib. Now that's the month Nisan we would call it, but God calls it Abib. There's a reason for that. Because Abib means to a certain stage of the harvest. And he happens to be talking about the barley harvest. It cannot be Abib if the barley's not ready. And that's why he called it Abib. Abib was when the barley was just about ready, and they would call it Abib. That begins Passover month. Often you hear people call it Nisan or Nisan, but it's actually the month Abib. The next verse, at the time appointed in the month Abib, for in it thou camest out from Egypt. Now go back to Exodus. When did the people come out of Egypt? They came out on Passover, didn't they? They left Passover, they crossed the Red Sea on the Feast of First Fruits. What month was that? We know it was the month we call Nisan, but now you understand it's the month of Abib. Exodus 34, 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread, as I commanded thee, in the time of the month of Abib, for in the month of Abib thou camest out of Egypt. Just more solid proof that the Abib is talking about the month of Passover. Deuteronomy, another one, observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover. There's no doubt about it, Abib is Passover month. Now let's look at the word Nisan. Nisan is used 2 times. Nisan is used 2 times. It's in Nehemiah chapter 2 and Esther chapter 3. One of those books in your Bible, those are captivity books. Captivity and post-captivity books where the children of Israel have been taken to Babylon. They're not in Israel. Now in Esther they're going to begin to build their temple. The book of Nehemiah they're going to build a wall. So they're getting back in their land, but they're really they're not observing the feast yet. And so the word Nisan is used there. Let's go a little further here. God was the first to reset the calendar, and there is a final reset yet to come. Exodus chapter 12. The Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So in Exodus chapter 12, notice the wording here. This month, look what it says here. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. Now that means it wasn't always the beginning of months. Are you with me there? That means that this is a change. God changed something. See, a lot of people are saying that no, this was always New Year's, but when they went to Babylon, New Year's was changed. That's not true. God changed the beginning of their month way back in Exodus. He changed their month. Of course, in Exodus, they're in Egypt, right? They've been in Egypt for 400 years. Now, some people are saying that New Year was changed from. That is not true. New Year's is Tishri 1, always was Tishri 1, always will be. God didn't change New Year's. God said, this shall be your beginning of months, because this is their new beginning when they left Egypt. And this is the beginning of the feast calendar, the prophetic feast calendar that they're going to use. So this is a change. This means that it didn't used to be this didn't used to be the month number 1. Tishri was month 1 in the fall. But now, from now on, this will be month number 1. Okay, everybody still with me there? Here's the 2 calendars together. You got the civil calendar and the sacred calendar. Now they use the word Nisan. I don't like to use the word Nisan because I believe the word is Abib, but that's okay. You see the 7th month Nisan over here. The 1st month is Nisan on the sacred calendar or the feast calendar. Okay. Now let's go a little further here. Let's skip the shovel digging a little deeper and let's go a little further. In Bible days, the month of Passover. Now don't miss this. This is the crux of it all. In Bible days, the month of Passover was not determined by the progression of the months, but by the condition of the barley in the field. Can you read that there? In Bible days, they didn't use a calendar and say, oh, hey, we're 2 months away from Passover. No. Now get this. This is the problem we're having. In Bible days, you didn't know when Passover was. You couldn't schedule it for next year, or let alone 10 years from now. You couldn't schedule Pentecost. You couldn't schedule tabernacles. You couldn't schedule first fruits, because it all depended upon what? Barley harvest. That's right. In Bible days, it was not until they determined that the barley was ripe. That's when they determined Abib. The priesthood would go out, they would look at the field. If the barley was considered Abib, which means it's 7 to 11 days ready to harvest, then the announcement would be made, it is now Abib. This would be done on the last day of the month Adar, their 12th month, right before what would normally be Passover month. They would determine Abib. Now, if the barley's ready, they would declare Abib. Here's some barley for you. Here's a barley field. They would go out and look at the barley field. If the barley is almost ready for harvest, they would make the announcement, it's Abib. That's called declaring Abib. And guess what? 14 days later is Passover. 10 days later is the choosing of the lamb on the 10th of Abib. If the barley is not ready, that means that the seasons have changed. That means probably it's been about 3 years since they had a leap year. And they look at the field and it's, oh my goodness, it's not ready. It's probably got another month to go. Then they would postpone Passover month, and they would add a 13th month called Adar 2. In other words, they have 2 12th months, Adar 1 and Adar 2. An entire month is stuck in there. And that's a reset of the calendar, which does what? Keeps the seasons right for the harvest, okay? Now, there's a reason for that. Let's go a little further. Declaring Abib, since they only have 354 days on the Hebrew calendar, they have a leap year called Adar 2. Deuteronomy 16:1, observe the month of Abib, keep the Passover until unto the Lord thy God, for in the month of Abib the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. The Levites would check the barley at the end of the month of Adar. On that last day, they would make their announcement, it's Abib, and by 6 p.m. on that last day of Adar, it's either going to be Adar 2 or it's going to be the first, it's either going to be the first day of the Adar 2, which is the leap month, or it's going to be the first day of the month of Nisan or Abib, okay? The Levites would check the barley, okay? And here's a couple more counts, we'll skip that. Here's a saying I want you to get. Get this. No barley, in other words, the barley's not ready. No barley, no Abib. No Abib, no Passover. If the barley is not ripe, it does not meet the biblical definition of the word Abib. It is how they reset the calendars, kept the seasons right. There must be a sheaf of barley to wave on the Feast of First Fruits. Now, if you understand your 7 feasts, first feast is Passover on the 14th of the month of Abib. Feast of Unleavened Bread starts that night. It lasts for 7 days. That's the second feast. The third feast starts the first day of the week after Passover. Happened to be 3 days later in Jesus' day. And Jesus rose from the grave on the Feast of First Fruits on the first day of the week, Sunday. We call Sunday. They have to have barley they have to have a sheaf of barley from the harvest to wave before the Lord. It's the first fruits. If there's no first fruits, they can't wave a sheaf of barley. That's common sense, right? Are you getting where I'm headed with this? Are you understanding what I'm saying? There's no way that you can know when Passover is every month, because you don't know when the barley is ripe. And last time I checked, there's still no temple over there in Israel. Last time I checked, there's no priesthood over there in Israel that's officiating this stuff and determining Abib. So just because they claim it's Feast of Trumpets today in Israel and New Year's doesn't mean that on the biblical calendar that's right, because there's nobody checking the Abib, and I'll explain a little further in just a minute. There must be barley to fulfill the law of harvest. That's why it's so important that on that last day of the month, on the month of Adar, they look at the barley field. If the barley's ripe, then the Passover is 14 days away. If the barley's not ready, then it'll be postponed. And by the way, they weren't stupid. Those Jews are pretty smart. they knew, they'd know a month in advance, really, if that barley's going to be ripe. They're pretty, they know that. And a farmer knows if the barley's on schedule. He knows that. So you could plan your schedule around that, but it wasn't official until the announcement is made. All right, a little further here. A sheaf of barley must be waved. That's Leviticus chapter 23, verses 11 through 15. You can look that up for yourself. The sheaf of barley must be waved. If there's no barley, it cannot be a bib. If there's no bib, no Passover. Why do they not do this today? Why no system of a bib in Israel today? And why so many people don't even know about it? After the dispersion in 70 A.D., the Jews were scattered all over Europe there. The Levites created a mathematical system for determining when Passover was every year, because there was no barley to look at. So the Jews made a mathematical system which is not biblical. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's not biblical. This is not the biblical way. You cannot determine a bib with a mathematical system. It has to be done by looking at the barley in the field. All right, this was not God's plan. Now you and I, in the church age, are on the other side of the veil. If you can see that, the veil in the temple was rent in two when Jesus dies on the cross. We are not under the ceremonial laws. You and I don't kill lambs. We don't bring first fruits. We don't participate in these ceremonial things. Why? Because we're on the other side of the veil. Those things pointed to something. They pointed to Christ. Now that Christ has come, those things are done away, right? In Israel, here's my last slide. In Israel, everything revolves around the harvest. Now, I'm not going to go into, there's another 20 slides here or more that deal with the harvest in Israel and how this all comes together. There's the three harvests here: the barley harvest, wheat harvest, fruit harvest. All the feasts revolve around these three harvests. It's amazing. Everything in Israel revolves around the harvest. So these are important things to understand. The determining of a bib. So now, do you understand what I mean when I say no man can know the day or the hour? Nobody knows when Feast of Trumpets is, because nobody knew the proper month for Passover. Passover is it resets the entire 7-month calendar is dependent upon the barley. That's right. The 7-month calendar, all 7 feasts that take place in the 7-month calendar, from Passover, unleavened bread, Feast of First Fruits, Pentecost, and then the 3 fall harvests, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles. The timing of them is all dependent upon one thing: the barley harvest, the barley being declared a bib. So who's declaring a bib today? Nobody. Now what does all this mean? In closing, let me say this. What does all this mean in light of prophecy? Number one, it means nobody can know the day or the hour, because you don't know when it's a bib. But deeper than this, what does this all mean in relation to the rapture and the Lord coming and the end times? I'll tell you what it means. The barley, and I don't have time to go into it, but I can prove to you. And in my new book, I talk about this, and it's also in the Barley Harvest book. I talk about the fact that the barley is a type of Israel. So what does that mean? God's not looking at a field of barley in Israel, I promise you. What is God looking at? God is looking at the nation of Israel. When God decides Israel is ready, when the 12 baskets of Israel, when the 12 tribes are ready, God will hit the reset button. I believe it'll happen in the spring. God will hit the reset button, and the 7-month clock will begin ticking, and you and I will be out of here on a new moon on a fall month. September, October, or November. I believe it'll be an October, November month for other reasons that I don't have time to get into in this session. But so God determines a bib, and it's not determined by us, and it's not determined by the church. We think it is, but it's not. It's determined by Israel. When Israel is ready, or a bib, because that's what the word means. When Israel is a bib, God hits the reset button. And 7 months later, we're out of here, brother. Well, I hope that's been a help to you. This is Brother Dan Goodwin, God's Found Jubilee Ministries. You can find us at godsfoundjubilee.com. There's many books and DVDs that I think will be a help to you. You can also see the brand new book that's coming out real soon. You can see how you can be a part of that, be a partner in the ministry, and pre-order the book and get your name in it. So there's also on the website, there's a donate button if you'd like to be a help to the ministry. That would be a blessing. All right, till next time, God bless y'all.